Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar on providing benefits and work incentives planning supports just in time, an introduction to the SSI Youth Toolkit. My name is Sylvie and I'm a Y-TAC team member. Before we begin, let's go over a few things. On the top right-hand corner, you're able to download our PowerPoint presentation at any time during the webinar. Below that are the links to Pod, where you'll see our evaluation. We'd greatly appreciate it if you can take 5 minutes to complete this after the webinar. It helps us to ensure we are providing high-quality training and technical assistance. In the bottom right-hand corner, feel free to participate in conversation with everyone else and place your questions there for the speakers. All right, and that's it. We hope that you enjoy this webinar. Kim, I'll hand things over to you.
Thanks, Sylvie. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We're excited to have all of you joining us this afternoon as we get to hear about this phenomenal resource that we have available. I am going to walk you through some introductory information. Today we've got joining us Thomas Golden and Jim Sheldon, and they're going to tell you about themselves here in a little bit, but they are phenomenal people who have worked really hard on developing these great toolkits. As Sylvie indicated, we do have an evaluation that we would love for you to complete at the very end of this, and there's a link there where you can do that. Better to do it quick and while it's fresh on your mind. And the webinars are submitted to receive CRC credits. And if you are someone who wants to submit for those, after this webinar, we'll need for you to first participate in the entire webinar, and then at the very end, complete the evaluation, and then you'll send an email to Jessica Fuentes-Diaz in order to request the form that you would need to submit for your credits. I want to tell you a little bit about the Voc Rehab Youth Technical Assistance Center. We are one of about 5 national federally funded technical assistance centers to support and serve youth with disabilities. The grant is housed at the Institute for Educational Leadership in Washington, D.C., and there are several partners, one of which is Cornell University's Lisa Yang and Hockey Tan Institute on Employment and Disability out of their School of Industrial and Labor Relations, of which I'm an employee, as well as Thomas. We do a lot around product development, research, technical assistance, training, subject matter experts coming out of that. We have also a partnership with Boston University School of Education to assist with the evaluation of all the work that we do as a national center. And we have a variety of key subject matter experts from across the country that either engage in research and writing, product and tool development, dissemination, or the vast amount of training that we do across the country. IEL has been around for more than 50 years and is in Washington, D.C. They actually house the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability. If any of you have used the 411 on disability disclosure or the guideposts, those are tools that came out of IEL. And IEL really has a strong focus on ensuring equity, working in policy, and supporting individuals with disabilities in terms of leadership and engagement in civic opportunities. Wonderful resources. We have our website right there, and we encourage you to visit it. Lots of wonderful programs that come out of IEL. Y-TAC has a specific focus that's different from the other national centers that focus on transition, in that we are supporting state voc rehab agencies in their work with youth with disabilities. We also help and support their partners. But our population is one that is a very a specific niche. It's what we call the opportunity youth, and those include our youth who are experiencing homelessness, youth who might be in foster care or juvenile justice system, those who've dropped out, those who might be they've reached the maximum age of eligibility, exiting high school, but they're no longer engaged in any kind of education, training, or work, and they're under the age of 25. So our goal is to really work with the voc rehab agencies to make sure that reaching those populations is an intentional focus of theirs in terms of helping them access voc rehab services and other services that are available to them. I do want to mention that you can access the toolkit that is being presented today by clicking on that link. We also have under links within Adobe Connect where you can access the toolkit. And just a reminder that we have another webinar coming up on Thursday, and if you want to register for that, you can do so also from the link. A couple of our other partner centers that we work with are Y-TAC, which is the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance Center, and they really focus on everything to do with the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act regarding law and policy, with a heavy emphasis on their key areas of the pre-employment transition services, supported employment, Section 511, subminimum wage. And then there's the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, which I'm sure many of you are aware of as well, NTAC. Those are our partners that have had a big emphasis on working with state education agencies over the last 15 plus years, and have also over the last 5 years been working with the voc rehab agencies as well to model at the national level that collaborative work that that should occur between partners. We also have the Promise Center, which came out of the federal grant to really work with students who are receiving supplemental security income and their families and providing supports to them. And lastly, as I mentioned previously, the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth and the resources they have that come out of IEL. And I believe each of those should be an active hyperlink, so when you download the PowerPoint, you should be able to click on them and it'll take you directly to their website. So just a little reminder to register for the webinar that we will have on Thursday with Thomas and Jim, where we're talking about the SSI Toolkit. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Jim and Thomas to start the content.
Thank you so much, Kim. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. My name is Thomas Golden. As Kim mentioned, I'm the Executive Director at the Yang Tan Institute on Employment and Disability in the ILR School at Cornell University. And it was about a year ago that we launched this SSI Just-in-Time Toolkit. And over the past year have been working on developing and getting ready to launch this fall a new just-in-time toolkit focused on Social Security disability insurance. And that's what Thursday's webinar is going to focus on. But we thought before we launch the new webinar, it might be a really good idea for us to take a step back and introduce our stakeholders again to the original kind of flagship just-in-time toolkit that was developed. As Kim was talking about and defining for us who these opportunity youth are, you can imagine that when we talk about this population of often marginalized youth, that their lives frequently intersect with public entitlements, which makes having an understanding of both the Supplemental Security Income Program as it relates to youth, but also the Social Security Disability Insurance Program as it relates to youth, really essential knowledge areas. The challenge that we often face, though, as we think about capacity building with local stakeholders and state stakeholders around working with this youth population, is that not everybody is able to be a credentialed benefits and work incentives practitioner. And we identified early on, IEL had identified with their partners, the need to develop some online tools that would provide practitioners like those that are represented here today with 24/7 access to the information they need as they're trying to help these youth navigate the return to work process, especially if they receive these entitlements. And throughout today's broadcast, you're going to be introduced to terminology that might not be familiar to you. I don't think Jim and I are able to talk about Social Security programs without throwing in the occasional acronym, no matter how hard we try. And so you'll see here listed are some of those acronyms that we are going to be talking about today. Student Earned Income Exclusion is represented by SEIE. Of course, Supplemental Security Income is more frequently known as SSI, and the Disability Insurance Program known as SSDI. Jim is going to be taking some time to introduce you to the network of work incentive planning and assistance programs across the country, also known as WIPA. Of course, we'll be talking about the VR agencies, those vocational rehabilitation agencies, and those counselors and practitioners that work frequently with them. And you've already heard Tim use multiple times talking about the Y-TAC, or Vocational Rehabilitation Youth Technical Assistance Center. And so today, we are going to introduce you to this SSIU toolkit, the 10 toolkit topics that make it up, what the purpose of the toolkit is, as well as the common elements that cut across each of the modules in the toolkit. We're also going to focus on strategies for integrating and using these toolkits into existing statewide training efforts for voc rehab counselors, but also talking about how these tools can be utilized by an array of different stakeholders. Sylvie had shared with Jim and I the list of participants for today, and as I was reflecting on the list, I was reminded again that this topic just isn't of relevance to voc rehab counselors. This topic is relevant to community rehabilitation programs, to supported employment practitioners, as well as transition personnel and other stakeholders that might intersect and work with school districts and or workforce development. And so we have a broad array of potential end users that are here that we are going to introduce to how they can self-direct some learning in this area, but also how you might be able to couple that with some additional training that might build either the state capacity through your state vocational rehabilitation program or through networks of community rehabilitation programs. Now, there are lots of different avenues, really, as you think about how to utilize these types of resources through the day-to-day activities that you're likely engaged in. And so we're going to talk about what situated learning is in self-pacing that, as well as where you can get some additional technical support that is available to you through the Y-TAC. Now, there is the opportunity for you throughout today's broadcast. We're so fortunate to have Kim helping moderate today for us. And we want to encourage you throughout the broadcast today to post any questions that you might have in the question and answer box. We're going to pause at some critical points to kind of look at those questions and see if some of those questions might enhance what we're talking about, but also take more questions at the end of the presentation, time permitting, of course. If you don't get your question in during the broadcast today, but you have a follow-up question, we want to encourage you to avail yourself of sending that question into our email here at the Y-TAC by emailing us at bry-tac@iel.org. Again, that's bry-tac@iel.org. And someone on our team will develop a response and get back to you with questions that you might forward to us. And so let's start, before I turn it over to Jim, talking about why is situated learning so important to practice, and how can situated learning, like a just-in-time toolkit, really assist us in achieving better outcomes for the individuals that we're serving. Situated learning is basically a theory. It's an education theory on how individuals actually acquire their professional skills and translate those new skills into actual practice. How many of you have gone to a training program in the past, and while you're there, you're thinking, wow, this is so cool, this information is so essential, and then it's a week later, you're back in your day-to-day job, and you're like, man, what did they say again about that training? Situated learning recognizes that often the things that we hear at a specific point in time, we don't retain. And so situated learning is about how can we create better meaning around those skills that we're trying to help people develop by encouraging and activating that within the context of the real-life activities that they're engaged in. And it's a process, really, of enculturation that emphasizes kind of the social cultural setting and the activities of people within that work setting, right? And so it recognizes that, let's say you as a state vocational rehabilitation counselor, or you as a job placement person within a community rehabilitation program, that to be able to maximize how you're going to apply the information that we're going to talk about today, or that you might self-pace your learning on in one of the modules, you really need to be able to access that information at the point in time at which you're needing to utilize that. And so as we developed, it was probably 24 to 18 months ago now, this SSI toolkit, we really kept that enculturation process in the forefront for us as we were thinking about what are the most important modules within this toolkit to develop. How can we make sure that we develop these modules within an authentic content text that talks about the experiences that you might have in your day-to-day, and how we can provide and equip you with tools as you're engaging in those day-to-day activities that you do with your job to really maximize your ability to translate information into practice. A really important element of situated learning is that there's this concept of what we call a more knowledgeable other. I like to think that that's the majority of people in the world when I think about myself. But as it relates to Social Security content, a just-in-time toolkit like the one we're going to be talking about today actually is what we call a more knowledgeable other, because it's a repository of information and practices that are essential to us changing behavior, right? And so it serves as a resource that helps bridge what we call the knowing-doing gap, right? The things that we might know but maybe not know how to actually put it into practice. And what this toolkit will do is set up for you expert performance or demonstrations of how you can do certain things, and then provide you tools that will allow you to model some of those practices. So let's say, for example, you're sitting down with a young person and their family in your office, and you're trying to help them understand a certain work incentive that's there. You're able to access that toolkit for tips on how to do that, as well as checklists that might be helpful for you, and provide you that really important scaffolding that you need to be able to implement the behavior, as well as reflect on and assess your learning along the way. And Jim is going to highlight for you how some of these characteristics have actually been built in to the toolkit for your use. And so with that, Jim, I'm going to turn it to you to introduce people to the toolkit, what it is, its purpose, and how it's organized.
Okay, and I'll assume Kim will let me know if I cannot be heard. Thank you, Thomas, and I want to thank everybody from the Institute on Educational Leadership and Cornell for everything that you're doing behind the scenes and working directly with me to make sure this goes smoothly. A little bit about my background. I'm somewhat retired in the sense that I'm no longer with Neighborhood Legal Services, where I worked for so many years, but as Thomas knows, I directed or oversaw a regional work incentive counseling project for a little over 20 years. And what we did in that project, and this happens all over the country now, is provide one-on-one counseling to individuals with disabilities who are receiving SSI or Social Security disability benefits or payments, and who now are embarking on some type of vocational plan. And as people probably know, and I see that there's 143 of you, or at least 143 web lines open, this is an issue that perplexes people all over the country, from the beneficiaries themselves to their families to all those who work with them. And hopefully today, and particularly through the Toolkit series, we're going to be able to cut through some of that. First thing I want to do is provide you with some kind of a sense of what the toolkits are, how they're organized, and their purpose. So I'm going to move us along to the next slide. Our target audiences, as we lay out on slide 23, are primarily two audiences. One is state vocational rehabilitation agency staff. Now, this can be the individual counselors, but really anybody within the agency who plays some role in providing direct service to youth ages 14 to 25. Now, clearly the agency serves a lot more than that, but that's our focus as the Y-TAC project. But also the VR agency supervisors and managers. And I'm sure many of you who are on the line here today know that when SSI or SSDI are involved, oftentimes we have to spend time trying to make sure those youth, those families are educated about what might happen if they went to work when they're on benefits. And the good news is there's a lot of work incentives that should help overcome those barriers that youth may have to taking that step in the direction of working. A second target audience is the youth themselves that are being served by the VR agency and family members, typically the parents, but it may be any number of other family members. And then there's a wide range of secondary audiences. Thomas said, we know that many of the people that are with us today are neither state VR agency employees, youth themselves, or family members, but you come from a wide range of agencies. And Sylvie's shared with me a list of where you come from. And I really want to welcome everybody here. Encourage you to go on these toolkits, see what's on there. I'll be walking you through some of them today. And forward those links to others in your network of providers who may be able to benefit from this. So here's the modules themselves. Now this is a screenshot, so I'm just going to quickly go through the titles. And in a couple of minutes, we're going to go live to the website where I can actually walk you through a couple of the toolkits. There's 10 of them. I'm responsible for 8 of these. Thomas is responsible for 2. But I know Thomas and his team did a lot of work to make what I did much more accessible to the audience that goes on the site and takes a look at these things. And the way these are set up is really to present you with the curriculum on the SSI program and how youth interact with it. Number 1 is understanding the basics of SSI and appeals. I recommend you take these in order, but depending on where you are on the learning curve, you might want to zero in on something like number 6, how earnings impact Medicaid. I'm here to tell you, when you look at that and some of the resource materials we direct you to, Medicaid eligibility or continued Medicaid eligibility should never be something that work is going to interfere with. But of course, every case may turn on its own facts. So moving through what I'll call the curriculum, you've got number 2 that's on medical continuing disability reviews and the age 18 redetermination, where the SSI program is going to periodically review to see if people still meet the disability criteria. Number 3, how income and resources impact SSI eligibility and payment amount. Again, these are set up as snapshots. We purposely kept them at a length where you can probably get through a toolkit and at least glance at those other documents on there in about 20 minutes or so. But as my friends at Cornell like to say, if you want to go into the deeper end of the pool, you could be spending an hour or more if you go out to look at some of the resources that we provide you with. Number 4, using the SSI work incentives to create economic safety nets and pathways to work. A lot of great work incentives in the SSI program, and I'll be talking about one set of incentives in particular when I go live to module number 5, which is on the special work incentives for youth, the student earned income exclusion. Again, number 6 is on how earnings impact Medicaid. A big focus there is on something known as the 1619B Medicaid program, where most SSI beneficiaries are going to be able to retain Medicaid when they work despite being on SSI. And in all of these toolkits, and we'll use a similar format, we go through examples to see how this plays out in real life. Number 7 is supporting asset development and accumulation. The 2 biggest areas of focus there are on something known as the SSI Plan to Achieve Self-Support, or the PASS plan, and on the fairly new ABLE accounts that have now sprouted up in practically every state of the country. And very excited about that. I know I've done some work with the National Disability Institute to set up some of their resource materials on ABLE accounts. Thomas is the one primarily responsible for the next 2, supporting effective decision making. That's number 8, and supporting and engaging families, which is number 9. And then the last one, number 10 in the SSI Toolkit series, is assisting youth in transitioning to the Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI program. And I really want to urge you to think about joining us on Thursday when we're going to talk about SSDI. And I'm here to tell you a lot more youth, especially as they get to age 20 or so, are going to be eligible for SSDI because they don't need that much of a work record to qualify on their own Social Security record, and many of them are going to be able to qualify on the Social Security record of a parent who's now retired, receiving disability benefits, or who's deceased. So let me move on.
Jim,
yes?
Before you move on, we have 2 questions.
Okay.
Mark has asked, excuse me, he said Medicaid is state specific. Is your toolkit adaptable to all 50 Medicaid programs? That's the first question.
Okay. Let me, great question. I think it's adaptable if you've got enough knowledge. I guess I can't make this offer generally, but if you had something in mind, I'd say send it to the folks at Y-TAC. They might send it up the line to me. I'm not sure. But 1619B is common enough in terms of its elements that I think you should be able to adapt. The biggest thing about 1619B is that the thresholds for 1619B eligibility vary from state to state, but the elements of what makes a person eligible are going to be the same. I hope that's helpful. And I think you said you had a second question.
And then, yes, kind of along those lines, Stacy has said, 1619B Medicaid, is it the same as MBIWPD, that she sometimes uses those interchangeably?
No, they're 2 very different work incentives. 1619B is going to be available in every single state. MBI, or the Medicaid buy-in, goes by different names in different states, but Medicaid buy-in is kind of the common name. In New York, we call it the Medicaid buy-in for working people with disabilities. That's an optional program that was created by 2 different pieces of legislation in the late 90s. I believe the last time I checked, there were 45 or 46 states that had opted for some type of Medicaid buy-in program. It is summarized very quickly in the SSI Toolkit number 6 on how earnings impact Medicaid. In the SSI SSDI Toolkit, and I believe it might be number 10, it's 8, 9, or 10, we devote a whole toolkit to the Medicaid buy-in program. There is going to be a lot more variance with the Medicaid buy-in from state to state than there is with 1619B. So if the same person was going to ask about the adaptability of the Medicaid buy-in toolkit in your state, it would be a little bit more work. Any other questions before I move on, Sylvie? Okay, let me move on then. The purpose of the toolkits, and that heading there says promote better vocational rehab counselor understanding of, and I would just say substitute your title, your agency, because it applies to all of you. We want to promote a better understanding of cash benefits, SSI, SSDI, and the 2 federal health insurance benefit programs, Medicaid and Medicare, particularly as they're received by youth. How those benefits are affected by any kind of paid work, how youth can access any of the key work incentives to minimize any immediate impact on benefits. On Thursday, we'll be talking in particular about the trial work period. We have an entire toolkit on that for SSDI. Again, with SSI, I'm going to focus today on this student earned income exclusion, which is very exciting. Allowing vocational rehab counselors to make informed choices about work, earning, and their benefits. You're going to see, as you look at the toolkits, there's these things that we've created called print and go tip sheets. I think that's the terminology. And the idea is to encapsulate everything within what you could print out as a page or two. In fact, yesterday I was playing with one of them, and by dropping it into Microsoft Word at, I think, a 12-point font, one of the ones in the student earned income exclusion came out to about a page and a half. I would certainly urge people to do it that way if they have time, but you can certainly print them out and share them with youth, share them with families. Helping youth develop pathways to greater economic self-sufficiency in support of life goals. I won't pretend to be an employment specialist. I defer to many of the people who are on the lines today for that expertise. But making sure that the beneficiaries, the youth in this case, have some understanding of how benefits are going to be affected by work is critical. And when we get into the toolkits, I think we've put in links on each of them for how to find free sources of benefits counseling, work incentive counseling, benefits planning. It goes by a lot of different names, but how to find that in your state. And then, so ultimately, you're able to translate knowledge into practice. Okay. Navigating the Toolkit website, and I'm going to go to this in a couple of minutes, but what you're going to find when you get there, and we've already looked at that screenshot, you're going to see that list of the 10 Toolkit modules. Again, this is set up so that you can use it as what we might call a self-regulated training modules, so that you could look at the 10 toolkits as a curriculum. But hopefully this is something that you'll come back to from time to time as somebody presents questions on any number of the issues that are presented there. So whenever you arrive at the toolkit, the first thing you're likely to hone in on is what we call the topic home. and that provides a brief summary of the Toolkit's topic. And then you're going to find other links at the top of the topic home screen. One is for Test Yourself, and as I have spent more time, particularly preparing for this webinar, I'm fairly convinced that the Test Yourself might be something that you want to do twice. Once before you go into the Toolkit, just to see how much you already know, and once when you finish going through the Toolkit, which again, maybe allow yourself about 20 minutes to go through the Toolkit home, maybe go in and see what the resources are, look at some of those print and go tip sheets, then go back, test yourself again. See if you haven't learned something just by going through that Toolkit. Resources, and I'm going to go through a few examples. Pretty much the resources we've put into these toolkits are hot links to online information. And again, I'll show you some examples of that, and then the print and go checklists that you can print for yourself. You may want to hang some of these on your bulletin board if that's where you put this kind of information, or maybe have a folder with it. So, as I move to slide 27, we're going to start talking about how to use a toolkit, and I'm going to focus on the student earned income exclusion. Reason I picked this one, two reasons. Number one, it might be, right along with those Medicaid work incentives, the most powerful work incentive that you're going to find that affects the broadest number of youth. But number two, as important as it is, in most cases it's pretty straightforward to understand, so I think we can cover a lot of the high points of it today so that you walk away understanding something that perhaps you did not understand before. So, Sylvie, what I'd like to do is take people to the first poll question, and it's almost as if you were going to use this toolkit and you wanted to figure out what your base of knowledge is right now. So here's the first poll question. I'm going to read it to you, and then you're going to pick A, B, or C, and we're going to tally up the votes. So Candida is 17 years old. She just completed her second year of high school, and she plans to return to school in the fall. She gets an SSI payment of $771 per month, which is the 2019 SSI rate when the state is not supplementing it. What's going to happen to Candida's SSI payment? You guys are reading ahead already. What's going to happen to her SSI payment if she gets a summer job and earns approximately $1,085 per month gross during July or August? Is it A, she will lose her entire SSI payment for 2 months as a result of taking this job? B, she's going to lose about $500 of her SSI with her payment being reduced to $271 per month. And I'm sorry, I didn't correct my own typos there. Or is the answer C? None of these wages will be counted by the SSI program. Her SSI payment is going to remain at $771 per month. And I'm watching the votes come in. I'll give it a couple more minutes. We've almost got 100 votes, and we may have a fairly knowledgeable group here because I'm encouraged by the results I'm seeing. What I'm going to do, Sylvie, is have you stop the poll now, and I can tell you that we've got an overwhelming number of votes for the last one. I wanted to have you show the poll answer, Sylvie, if you could. If it's not on there, I can just share it. The answer is C. The wages will not count, and her SSI remains at $771. And I'm very encouraged that the overwhelming majority of you had the right answer. I don't know if you've already looked at that toolkit. I know we've only got a handful of benefits counselors or benefits planners in the audience, but that middle answer, B, she'll lose 500 of the SSI, that's what happens if somebody's not eligible for the SSI student earned income exclusion. So let's do this. I'm going to ask Sylvie to work with me because I'm going to go live to the internet now. And rather than spend time going through what would be slides 28 through 31 on your PowerPoint, we're going to go directly to the internet, and I'm going to walk you through some of the features that you're going to see in all the toolkits, and then I'll specifically go to, and I'm talking and trying to do something at the same time. There we go. So, and I'll let Sylvie tell me if this seems to be working. So what's going to happen? And, okay, great. I'm going to go back to your page where you see the modules. This is the welcome screen, and hopefully you'll get to a point where you'll zero right down to the modules because you understand that this is where you go to access things. So, for example, let me go to number 3. How income and resources impact SSI eligibility and payment amount. When you go to that, with every one of your toolkits, the first screen you see once you click on it is going to be very similar. You'll have the topic home, which is what we're on right now. The test yourself, where I'm suggesting, originally this was set up as a post-test, but I'm going to suggest, if you've got time, do it as both a pre-test and a post-test. You've got resources, and then you've got that print and go checklist. And so on this one, they're not going to be exactly the same sections, but it's going to be laid out very similarly. And you'll see on the right screen, you'll always have this list of other modules that you can click on if you want to get to them. So you've got some background on SSI payment rates and Medicaid, the treatment of income in determining monthly SSI payment rates, some definitions of earned and unearned. And what you're going to see in most of these, I'm not going to click on any of the video clips today, but we've got some video clips with real people generally sharing their stories. And this one has a couple of video clips. You'll see any number of examples. And you've got this example of Josiah, and it shows, I'm not going to go through this because I want to spend the time with the student earned income exclusion, but we've tried to make this as concrete as we could so that you're going to be able to follow, for example, what happens when Josiah earns $865 gross. We're not using the student earned income exclusion. And how a little bit more than half of his wages are ignored before you come up with the SSI monthly payment with the earnings coming into consideration. SSI programs treatment of resources, some of the common exclusions, fairly short. And those tip sheets, print and go checklist, summary of key things that do not count as income for SSI recipients. And if you want to get this in some kind of format where you can print just that, I don't like how small these fonts are. my recommendation to you is just take the extra step to block and paste it into a word processing document so that it's a bit easier to read, maybe even do a little bit of formatting, or you could print this itself. I don't know what font size this is going to come out to if you print it. You may want to experiment with that a little bit. So the test yourself, you'll see a series of questions. For instance, the SSI program defines income as items received in cash or in kind that can be used to meet a previous person's need for food, clothing, or shelter. Is that true? No, the answer is false. The term clothing was part of the definition of income for many years, but was eliminated from that definition more than 10 years ago. If you're like me and you've been doing this for a while, the terms food, clothing, or shelter kind of roll off the tongue, and you may not realize that, I think it was 2004, clothing was eliminated. So, resources, again, don't worry, Thomas, I'm watching my time. You're going to see places where you can click SSI treatment of grants, scholarships, fellowships, and gifts. A lot of great rules that exclude things. Some resources on ABLE accounts, including when you go to the ABLE National Resource Center site. So let me just come up for air a second, Sylvie, or I guess it's Kim, and see if there's any questions that have come up before I take us to the next poll question. Okay, actually, I'm gonna stay on the screen for a sec here. So let's go to module number 5, which is on the SSI student earned income exclusion. So we're on the topic home, and right off the bat, you've got the student earned income exclusion, a brief summary. It starts out by talking about how the maximum SSI payment rate for 2009 is based on a 771 federal benefit rate with an optional state supplement. In New York, our state supplements SSI by a few dollars. And to determine the monthly amount of the SSI payment, any countable unearned and earned income is subtracted from the SSI base rate. And all the examples in this toolkit and the others are going to use the 2019 SS at 771 federal benefit rate with no state supplement. So here it is in just a couple of sentences. The SEIE, or Student Earned Income Exclusion. This powerful work incentive is available to students who are under age 22 and, quote, regularly attending school. During 2019, it excludes the first $1,870 of gross monthly earnings up to a monthly maximum of $7,550 per year. Let me read that again. During 2019, it excludes the first $1,870 of gross monthly earnings up to a yearly maximum of $7,550. So if this was new to you or to the person that you're going to share the links with, right off the bat, they're going to see this, and hopefully it's going to make them want to read further. And then you're going to see we start out with a simple example. And because of the regularly attending school requirement, as we lay out here, the SEIE is a stay-in-school incentive. And what can our vocational rehab agency staff tell us? The chances of a better employment outcome are going to go up significantly if we get that young person to stay in school. They can make money and keep most of it, in many cases all of it, if they stay in school and take advantage of the student earned income exclusion. So, and let me do this. I want to go to our next poll question number 2, Sylvie, because it, I believe, deals with this regularly attending school requirement. So let's take a peek at poll question number 2. And I don't know if I have to get out.
Can we pause for one moment? We want to
Yes.
resize the view so that the captioning is still visible with the share screen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And while she's doing that, I'm really going to encourage you to look at those video clips. Look at the examples. The examples hopefully are really going to bring home a lot of this. A lot of times when we do examples in training, someone will get up and say, I'm working with that very person. How did you know? Well, a lot of these examples are common from person to person. And as Sylvie's resizing, go ahead and interrupt me. Are we all set?
I was just going to say, while we're waiting for her to do that, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions regarding SEIE that might be informative for the participants. One is, oftentimes we would hear that, well, a couple of things. One, that the individuals must request that exclusion, that it's not an automatic, and that they must inform Social Security when they are going to start working, and that they, should submit paycheck stubs and such. But oftentimes we'll hear that many of the staff at Social Security don't even know about that exclusion. Do you have any tips for ensuring that?
I do. I'll take you, after we do these next 2 poll questions, I'm going to take you to the resources link off the website, and there's something from the SSI policy manual that deals with student earned income exclusion. You don't always have to do this, but sometimes you need to show up with a copy from their own manual, because this is a best kept secret, not just among people with disabilities, their parents, and their service providers, but even among Social Security staff. It doesn't come up that often in their work, and they may not know about it. So I think Sylvie's bringing up the PowerPoint so that she can get access to the poll question. But did you want to bring, and so there's a section, I'm pretty sure there's a section either in the toolkit itself or it might be in one of the print and go tip sheets on strategies for getting this implemented in any individual case. And just remind me as we go back to the website if I don't point that out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to bring the poll question over now, then.
Super.
If we're ready for that.
Ready for it. Okay, here's number 2. Let me read it to you as you provide a true or false answer. The student earned income regularly attending school requirement can be met by attending a vocational training program that is designed to prepare a person for a job. Okay, so regularly attending school, can that requirement be met by attending, say, something other than high school, college, community college? Can it be met by going through, say, a training program to be an auto collision specialist? And we've got almost 100 responses. I'm encouraged once again that people seem to know their stuff, or maybe it's just intuitive. But I'm gonna say that we end the poll right here because we've got just over 100 responses. And the good news is that the answer is true. if you attend a vocational training program that's designed to prepare a person for a job and you meet the other requirements, you're under age 22, yes, the student earned income exclusion applies to that person. And in fact, there's an example right in the toolkit itself of a person qualifying based on that status. So let's go, Sylvie, to poll question number 3. Okay, number 3. The SSI student earned income exclusion is available to any qualifying student age 25 or under who regularly attends school. Let's see how carefully people were listening. Boy, I think we've got a pretty good group here. I'm very encouraged. Oftentimes, if I do live training and it was on a topic like this, I'd often ask at the very beginning, before you came in here today, had you heard of the student earned income exclusion? Let's stop the poll. And these last 2 questions are right from the Toolkit Test Yourself section. And if this group was doing that as a pretest, boy, did you do well. So I am very encouraged. I don't think this level of knowledge is going to be generally the same, though, I think, as we went across the country. Answer is false because it's limited to young people under the age of 22. Should it be 25? Yes, if not higher. But that's something that I think would take legislation to do. I'm not sure if Social Security could do that by regulation or policy. But given that young people in general, and certainly this is true for young people with disabilities, the likelihood of getting through, say, a college program before age 22 is fairly minimal. Most young people take at least 5 years to get through an undergraduate program these days. And if their vocational goal involves higher education, it might take that much longer. So what we're going to do, I'm going to share my screen again, Sylvie, so that we can walk through some more sections of the toolkit.
All right.
And as you're doing that, I don't know if there's any more questions anybody wanted to pose as we're getting ready to go back to the internet. And probably it's you, Sylvia, that's been asking the question. So I'll admit to the audience that before today I'd not worked with Sylvia other than through email. So I don't necessarily recognize her and Kim's voices. So let's see if I can make this go back to where we were before. And voila, we're there. First thing I want to do, and Thomas, I want to get to you within about 10 minutes, I think. The student earned income exclusion, 3 examples. So we're in what we call topic home. And first one is a high school student has a part-time summer job and works fewer hours during the school year. And
Jim.
Yes.
Do you have the website up?
I do. Are you not seeing it?
No, I'm just seeing the share my screen option.
Okay, let's see if we can. So you're not seeing the website?
No.
Okay. Let's see what we can do here.
Here it is. All right, we got it.
We got it?
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
you seeing my movement here? Okay. And
Yep, that looks good.
super,
Looks like
super.
we got the captioning too.
And so what you're going to see here, as I scroll down, is 3 examples of folks using the student earned income exclusion. First one is a high school student with a part-time summer job, and Miguel's $9.35 in gross wages for that summer job. If he drops out of school, he's going to have the regular rules apply to him, as you can see from that little calculation here. It's still a powerful work incentive, $85 plus 50% of the remainder, or $425 in net countable income. SSI payment reduced from $771 to $346. It's a decent work incentive. But if he stays in school, everything is going to be ignored, so that during those 2 summer months, he gets his full SSI payments of $771, and combined 1706, I believe. That's the monthly combined income from wages and SSI. Second example is the 10-month vocational training program while working part-time. And again, this qualifies as full-time school attendance. And this goes into the particulars of how many hours a week are needed to qualify. Number 3, college student works a summer job. And again, we want to make sure that student is under age 22. Charisse in the example here is 20. She gets a job during June, July, and August. Earns $1,750 gross per month. A lot of times college students, depending on where they work, can make more money than they might in high school. She's able to keep $1,750 gross per month. And we purposely picked an example where somebody is earning a pretty fair amount of money. And the pleasant problem she has, the resource limit, countable resources in excess of $2,000 would make her ineligible. We're going to have her open up an ABLE account with some of the excess savings so she can put that aside for future expenses. And you can learn a little bit about ABLE accounts from that toolkit on asset development, and then use the links in that toolkit to find out even more information about ABLE accounts. So in the couple minutes before I turn it over to Thomas, I just want to go through a few more things. Again, test yourself, generally 6 to 8 questions. A lot of them are true-false in these toolkits. Resources. I think in every one of the toolkits, we've got Social Security's Red Book, a guide to work incentives in there. And hopefully this link, I'm pretty sure they've all been updated, takes you to the 2019. Yes. I think I was on it yesterday. Program Operations Manual, System Policy. You know, if you're wanting to make sure that people at the Social Security office enforce this properly, this is what would be the Bible to them. This is their own policy manual. In selected cases, you may need to take a copy of that over to Social Security or mail it to them. At a minimum, send them this number, POMS SI 00820.510. Okay? Social Security Spotlight Series, I'll leave that to your own reading, but any number of resources online, and I tried to sprinkle those into the toolkits where I thought they'd be helpful. But now let's go to the print and go checklist. Here's this, just the general. I modeled this a bit after an at-a-glance series that my former office has had for the last 15 years or so. And the idea is to give the reader a snapshot. What regularly attending school means. There's some policies on homeschooled students. Example, contrasting if the Roberto in that example were not a student. And again, if you click on the top here, it comes out in a bit more user-friendly format. Again, I'll urge you, if you have time, to do a block and paste. Getting the SSI program to approve the student earned income exclusion. I was hoping I was right that I had put something together like this. Get the eligibility packet to the local Social Security work incentive liaison. There should be one in each Social Security office, or to the claims representative assigned to the beneficiary. What should be included in that packet? I'm suggesting either the policies themselves or references to them, right here. Statement that the youth is under age 22, proof that he or she is attending school, recent pay stubs, anything else that the Social Security person requests. You might want to consider printing the tip and go tip sheet. And then ideas for following up on the request. And if you have a work incentive counselor, they may be able to assist in the follow-up. Now, let me go back to the resources page. You know,
Jim, can we ask a couple questions?
Yeah, why don't you do that? I think what I'm going to be able to provide folks today, I'm probably at an end. So why don't we take a couple of questions, and I'll probably want to get it back over to Thomas in a few minutes, and then if there's time left at the end, we can go through a few more questions. So go ahead.
Great. So real quickly, I think this one's easiest. Someone asked if this toolkit was available in another language other than English.
I'm not aware, and maybe somebody else from IEL or Cornell could answer this. I'm not aware that this has been translated into any other languages. So can I kick that back over to anybody at Cornell?
Right. I don't recall that it has, but Thomas, I don't know if that's on the table for development.
It is not. It is not available in other languages, although there's nothing that would preclude you from running this through Google Translate or some other online translation system that could do that for you.
I will tell you.
A really good. Go ahead.
I will tell you that the Social Security Red Book gets translated into Spanish each year. I'm quite certain that the 2019 version has already been translated into Spanish.
Someone was asking if there was a list of work incentive liaisons.
A list of work incentive liaisons.
Can you be very specific?
I know we had them when I supervised a WIPA project for many years. And I think if you did a search for work incentive liaisons on the Social Security website, you might find them. If you can't, look for a list of area work incentive coordinators. There's generally at least one, sometimes more in the bigger states. The area work incentive coordinators are over the work incentive liaisons and should be able to provide you with that list. I would suggest searching for the AWIC, Area Work Incentive Coordinator.
Thank you. And then the last one for now was, and I understand their questioning, they say, why is the age range for youth 14 to 25, but Social Security will only allow students under 22 to take advantage of the student earned income exclusion? Which leads me to the next question in my mind, I've been wanting to ask is, has there been any precedent set for students who are still in high school served on an IEP that are 22 receiving?
Well, all I can tell you is that age 22 doesn't differentiate between high school, even prior to high school, or even homeschool students.
Yeah, or training program.
Yeah, and all I can tell you about the 22 versus 25, they're different pieces of legislation, and there's been any number of individuals who have commented to Social Security they should raise it to at least 25.
Right, and that's where we would encourage participants to, reach out to your legislators regarding that, because you can see the disconnect between the age range that's listed in the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and then what you see from SSA.
Yep.
So thank you, Jim.
So I think we want to go back to Thomas now, and we should be on slide 20 or 32, I believe. Yeah, 32.
Yep. So Sylvia, if you could help maneuver us back, that would be great. Jim, thank you so much for that informative walkthrough of the toolkit. Again, I think that one of the most powerful things of a toolkit like this as a situated learning tool is that over time it can be modified, it can be changed based on user experience. I know the SSI toolkit, from what it started out as, there have been subsequent edits to that site that have been done. The SSDI toolkit that we'll be talking about on Thursday is still currently in a beta format because we're really wanting to make sure that the user experience is taken into consideration as it's being finalized. And so we welcome feedback on the toolkits, things that you would like to see that might make it more usable, but also that might include content that you interact with and that you deal with on a daily basis. And so I'm moving us forward through these because Jim has already talked to you and done a live walkthrough. And I want to wrap our time up today by talking about how you can utilize this toolkit. Now, one of the challenging parts is that we have a lot of different stakeholders that are on here today. So I've seen that there are some directors of training for state-owned rehab agencies. There's some training directors within community rehab programs that are on, and then there are lots of individual practitioners. So I want to start this by saying that the great thing about a situated learning tool like this is it works at a micro level, but also at an organizational level or at a macro, larger systems level. I think what's really key, and what we've learned over the past decade of research that we've done looking at situated learning approaches and blending that with more traditional face-to-face learning here at the university, is that when we really try to impact outcomes, specifically looking at employment rates of individuals with disabilities, the research has shown that when you couple face-to-face training, that's really kind of deeper end of the pool, knowledge-based acquisition with instructional scaffolding like a just-in-time toolkit, like this SSI toolkit, that we see much greater behavioral change or more doing, if you will, at the direct line level that produces better outcomes. And so as we think about how you might utilize this toolkit, if you are one of those organizational level training directors or state-owned rehab training directors that are on, we want to encourage you to think about how you can move beyond just the toolkit as a singular experience to thinking about how you might be able to couple this with additional training for your agency and or your organization. Because you can always use this just-in-time toolkit as a self-directed manner. And so what we're recommending is if you're going to use this as an individual or promote it within some of your staff that you work with, we recommend averaging about 20 minutes per module of the toolkit. Of course, you'll need a little bit more time than that if you're going to spend significant time, maneuvering and looking through all the resource links that are provided. But taking 20 minutes per module will really get you through that self-paced learning of the module, and you'll be able to acquire some knowledge as a result of that. We recommend trying to complete all 10 of the modules in a 5 to 10 week period. That means that you'd be doing 1 to 2 modules per week to get through that. That includes watching the videos. And then also take opportunity of the testing yourself. You know, I think Jim and I both subscribe to it. It's always good to do a pre and a post. Where were you before you accessed an individual model on the knowledge that this toolkit is supposed to be helping you acquire? And then where were you after you completed it? And so challenge you that if you have the time, take the test first before you go through the individual module, and then again at the end to look at and to test whether or not you've actually acquired new information as a result of that. And then, of course, along the way, if you have feedback for us, clicking on the link on the website and providing us your thoughts as well as completing the online evaluation of the toolkit. We also want to encourage you that if you're part of a state-owned rehab agency and or an organization that has in-house expertise and the ability to do your own training, to think about how you might blend some specialized training around work incentives and benefits counseling with a broader kind of systems application of using the toolkit itself. Now, keep in mind, the Y-TAC can assist you with that. They can provide technical assistance to state-owned rehab agencies to aid them in designing an internal training model, provide access to archived webinars, as well as support to implement staff training, as well as they're able to provide additional training beyond that. Now, keep in mind, there are also lots of Social Security expertise within regions, right, or within specific states and or localities. And so I want to encourage you to think about the work incentive planning and assistance network that is out there. While many of them are not offering training per se to their communities, they can be an exceptional resource that you can access and plug youth that you are working with into, because transition age youth are a WIPA priority that was established by the Social Security Administration, and some state-owned rehab agencies actually hold the WIPA contract with the Social Security Administration in your state. So that can prove to be a really valuable resource for you. But in addition, many states have their own benefits planning and work incentive practitioner networks within the state. For example, in New York State, we have a network of independent living centers that are contracted by our state-owned rehab agency to provide benefits planning services and work incentive utilization services. And so doing kind of an environmental scan of where is the expertise, who's providing that service, might help you identify some stakeholders within your own catchment area who might be able to come in and do some additional in-depth training that you can actually couple together with utilization of the toolkit itself. Now, there are going to be a lot of issues that you're going to be able to troubleshoot and to spot utilizing this toolkit and know from experience. We so appreciate our partners at Virginia State-owned Rehab, who played a real pivotal role in helping us to develop some of the instructional videos that we use, but also other states across the U.S. that we know those state agencies have actually worked to systematize integration of this with their voc rehab counselors and their voc rehab assistants, just because it provides them a tool that they can access quickly and easily on their computer when they're in an interaction with a consumer and or their family that have questions or that they're trying to support as they're trying to maneuver return to work when the individual has SSI or SSDI. And so utilizing the toolkit can really help you to issue spot along the way. It's also just a great online desk reference for you to be able to bookmark so that you can get easy access into. I know one voc rehab counsel that I talked to actually downloaded all the print and go checklists and have them saved to their desktop, just because sometimes their internet out in the Midwest and the agency that they're working with isn't completely reliable. And by downloading it to their desktop, they're able to access it regardless of whether the internet is up and actually working within their offices. So encourage you to liberally utilize the information that's provided. And again, as you're having ideas or suggestions for how we might modify or enhance this toolkit, we really welcome that feedback, and you can provide that utilizing the online evaluation that is on the Toolkit website, and or by emailing us any thoughts or ideas that you might have. Now, as you can imagine, this content is very time sensitive, and so later this fall we will be updating the SSI Toolkit with 2020 cost of living adjustments. And so every year certain rates go up, certain limits or thresholds change, and we will be updating that, and we'll provide links. There's a new feature coming to the SSI Toolkit that will allow you to add your email to be sent an email anytime that there are any adjustments or edits done to the toolkit, so you can be aware of what those changes might be. Also an opportunity for us to maybe follow up with you to ask how you're using the toolkit and how you have found it has impacted your practice within the agency or organization that you're working with. And so I'm going to pause there. We did provide you references that we cite throughout today's PowerPoint presentation just to see, Kim, whether or not any additional questions have come in from folks.
There haven't been necessarily content questions. Oh, getting feedback there. But I did want to mention that Mary Lynn Revoir shared some information on there about the employment networks for Ticket to Work and a link where people can access information and assistance as well. And folks are interested in how Thursday's webinar will be different from today's. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I can talk about it. Unfortunately, SSI and Social Security disability insurance and the many ways of getting Social Security disability insurance, they are two very different programs. SSI is based on financial need. A person has to have limited income, limited resources. Social Security disability programs are based on the fact that some wage earner put money into the system in sufficient amounts through payroll withholding to be, quote, insured. In both programs for adults, the disability criteria is the same. For SSI, there's separate criteria for youth under 18. No income and resource criteria in the SSDI program. Of course, there is with SSI. The presentation and the toolkits are going to be very different. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you. And just a reminder to those of you that are on, in the box above the chat, it says links, and the third link will take you to where you can register for Thursday's webinar if you are interested in joining us for that. There are no other questions that have been added to the chat as of yet. This would be a great time to add anything else in there if you have any questions for Thomas or Jim.
And Kim, I might just add there that, again, just to remind folks, if you have questions following today's webinar or want to talk more to some of our folks here on our team about how this can be better integrated into your organization or state agency, you can email us at our Y-TAC email, which is bry-tac@iel.org. Again, bry-tac@iel.org, or visit our website at y-tac.org. You can also follow us on our social media on Facebook, Twitter, and or LinkedIn, and be provided with regular updates. And don't forget, if you're interested in this youth population, you're working with them, you want to figure out how to work better with them, don't forget to sign up for our Y-TAC newsletter. So I just wanted to put those plugs in as well, Kim, before we wrap up today.
Absolutely, thank you. And also just a reminder for everybody to complete the participant evaluation. There's also a link in that link box where it'll take you directly so that you can do it now while this information is fresh on your mind. There's 5 quick items that we ask for you to respond to. And just want to give a sincere thank you to both Jim and Thomas for spending your afternoon with us and sharing this incredible resource that you all have developed. We are very thankful to have it and thankful to have both of you. So thank you all so much, and thank you for all of the participants that were on today. We look forward to hearing from all of you and hope that you'll join us on Thursday. As a reminder, the recording and transcript for this webinar will be on our website in a few days, and you should receive an email indicating when it's available. So Sylvie, thank you very much for your help today. Anything final from you?
You covered it all, Kim. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.